This is the discussion for the first chapter, Introduction to Globalization. And we are going to break this lecture in three parts just so that it's easier and it is in chunks. The this chapter would mainly surround around discussing different perspectives of global issues and exploring differences among countries that are classified as newly developing, developing, and developed, examining the nature of firms in textile complex, and introducing the concept of supply chain. These are the broad objectives this chapter is going to uncover as you read. And things to remember, I would say, are on page number 8 to 9 in your textbook. The section is known as Global Lexicon. Now, for each chapter, Global Lexicon is provided at the beginning of chapter, and it gives you definitions of different concepts which you will need to know so that you understand what it means as it is mentioned in the chapter and the lectures. So I would propose that you review and study, but also for sure know the definitions which are there on this slide. And we'll discuss more about each of these later in our lecture part of it. So, for understanding this particular chapter goes with our course objective one, which is perspective for consideration of globalization, and also the chapter. Now, there are different arguments about is globalization good or bad? Has it benefited the society as a whole or not? I would say if till last year we would have said yes, globalization is has done wonders to the world economy. It has helped different countries grow economically and as a country, as a society. But I've also heard the other side of it, as in being there has been loss of industries within the domestic economy. So globalization does have its pros and cons. However, it has also resulted in world's people becoming increasingly connected and interdependent. So, one country is depending on the other for something. It could be a product, it could be a service, it could be intellectual property. So, it has brought us closer together. And I guess during maybe early when your parents were maybe young, they would have seen a robust textile and apparel manufacturing companies here right in the United States. It was more local supply chains, regional supply chains. However, that has really changed to what we are currently seeing in terms of apparel and textile manufacturing. I would say, based on the trade statistics, almost 95% of our clothing is imported from other countries. We do not have very robust apparel manufacturing industry, and the same goes for the textiles manufacturing industry as well. One thing which I do want to point out at this point is we consider textiles anything unfinished, which you all know coming from this program and as junior, and clothing would be finished garments. So as you review this chapter and look at different tables, please understand that textiles and clothing are treated separately. Keep that at the back of your mind as we go forward. And we have also seen the results of globalization has been the shift in production resulted in new business, economic and political government perspectives. But now the new wave, if you may, is what's next would be environmental and economic sustainability. Just based on my research, I would say the sustainable aspects of manufacturing and retailing are a little late in the United States, but they are a core principle of many European businesses and brands. So, something to focus on and read about as we go forward in this course. And sorry for the creaking noise, that's my chair, but I hope it's not going to be very disturbing. Things which we are going to study in this review, in this lecture, would be what is trade, what are the different types of trade, and measuring levels of development, measuring levels of trade, organization and operation of textile complex, which is something which I do want you to review on your own in the textbook. It's a very easy to read section, and I'm pretty sure you have done this right from your freshman year in AM 101 and AM 270. So I do not want to spend a lot of time on this topic. So I would suggest that you read on your own and let me know if you have any questions. So the first question, why do countries trade? Take a moment to think, why do countries even trade? What do you think? And trade is not something which is a modern day phenomena. Trade has always been there for thousands of years, maybe hundreds of years, let's say. Uh, but countries traded in some way or the other. It could have been a barter system. I had more silk, I'm going to trade you with maybe some saffron. So trade in some form or the other has existed for I would say at least 200 years or more. So, some of the reasons countries do not want to be self sufficient. That is something which they want to grow economically, and that the only thing they can do that is by trading what they think they have more of. Efficiency, using their resources efficiently, and looking at what is the best way to produce, market any products or services which are in excess for that country. And the last one is specialization. Specialization would be something where you can think about a country and say, this country is famous for silk, or this country is famous for designer wear. And so each country has a uh, unique expertise, if you may, has unique capacity to produce something or design something, and that is why countries. That is also one of the reasons countries trade. Take an example of Italy and how Italian goods are known to be high quality. So Italy is known for their high quality workmanship compared to, let's say, Germany or Japan. They are very high in technical textiles. So each country has developed their own niche capabilities, and which helps them have a trade advantage. Mostly concerned to anything within the borders of the country. International trade is exchange of goods involving two or more countries, and when you're thinking about anything outside of the country, we define sourcing as the most efficient vendor of services, materials, production, or finished goods at a specified quality and service level for delivery within an identified time frame. So that's an overarching definition of sourcing, which we would be using quite a bit in this course, and obviously it's in the title of the course as well. So think about, how do I find the best vendor for my products at the price which I want, at the quality which I want. Global trade, as we talked before, globalization has helped us interconnect much closely than before. And people, processes are becoming increasingly interconnected in all facets of our lives: cultural, economic, political, technological, and environmental. Exchange of information has really enabled these innovations, and even just exchanging information. And global trade, because of global, three types of integration are happening as we think about global trade. First is financial integration. We are seeing this on a global level where markets and countries trade, and it's a global phenomenon. Trade and investment is mostly regionally integrated. Think about the Americas. So North America, South America, they're regionally nearby. So you would have more of those integration happening in terms of trade agreements or investment just because they're near to each other as countries. So it has helped or boosted trade within regions of the world. And finally, labor integration, I would say, is mostly nationally regulated because of the nature of this industry. It is more labor intensive, and each country has their own labor laws. So yes, labor would be more nationally regulated than international. So there are two aspects which we are going to look at in this particular chapter, very important, and we will be discussing all of this throughout the semester. So please review, study all these concepts as you look at your textbooks. So first one is measuring levels of trade. Now, why do we need to understand why should we even why should we even measure levels of trade which is happening? Again, to understand how is our country placed within the entire global world. So one of the ways a country rises to the top would be the kind of trade they are engaged with. So how do we measure different levels of how do we measure trade? One of the ways would be to look at the exports for that country, imports, and trade balance. And we'll talk about each of those in a bit. But under trade balance, we do have trade deficit and trade surplus. Um, then coming to economic development, how do we measure levels of economic development? We measure it through, again, different indicators, and we will go in deep about all these indicators in part two of this lecture. So the first one is gross national product, gross national product per capita, gross domestic product, and GDP per capita. So these are the different indicators. As we all know, I'm pretty sure, I'm hoping that everybody knows what exports and imports are. Exports, anything which is shipped for import to another country in exchange for money, other goods, or jobs. Imports make goods available for domestic consumption or materials available for domestic production. So either we are importing or exporting any types of products and services. And again, these definitions are not unique to the textiles and clothing industry. Trade balance is one of the key indicators of how you would measure levels of trade for a particular country. So, trade balance can be calculated by exports minus import. A trade surplus means there is a positive trade balance, which I'm hoping everybody has guessed by now that the export numbers are higher than the import numbers. A trade deficit means that there is a negative trade balance. And this is a little bit more about what is trade surplus. Trade balance is going to be positive. There are more exports bringing money into a nation than imports sending money away from a nation. Trade deficit, balance of trade or trade balance is a negative number, meaning to say there are more imports sending money away from a nation than exports bringing money into the nation's economy. So take a moment to think, okay, what is trade surplus? What is trade deficit? Think about the United States. Do we export? And let's be specific to the textiles and clothing industry. Does United States import or more textiles and clothing, or where do we stand in terms of importing and exporting of textiles and clothing? Um, for this particular discussion, I do want you to refer to table 1.1 on page number 14 in your textbook. Study carefully the export and import statistics in the table. It is, I would say, they are more recent numbers than before. Sorry for as I'm turning the pages up if that's disturbing you. Um, but yes, so table 1.1 gives you values in millions of US dollars for textiles and clothing imports and exports for 2012 for some European countries and other countries around the world. And there's also GDP per capita given at the end of this table. So I would say study this carefully, and trade balance is not something which is rocket science. I would say it's pretty straightforward. Exports minus imports. So complete a low stakes pop quiz for chapter one on Canvas. You will also be asked to infer your results. So it is really necessary that you read the information before and after the table to understand what is going on. Why are we having trade surplus or deficit for some countries? What is that information telling you?